The manhwa starts with our protagonist named Hyun-sung falling off a building, shocked and confused. He doesn't understand why he fell off the roof, it's such a shame. He was going to finish school soon and went through all these hardships for that, so he doesn't understand why it all led to this. However, what he is sure of is that on this very day he fell asleep forever. 3 months later, while in the hospital ward, Hyun-sung's relative suggests to their grandmother to unplug him because he was diagnosed with autonomic personality disorder. To which the grandmother made it clear she didn't like hearing this because she still believes that her grandson will wake up soon while Hyun-sung can hear everything they say. After a while, Grandma sits next to Hyun-sung, holding his hand and trying to wake him up, while wondering how this happened to him. Hearing his grandmother worrying about him, he tries to console her, but he knows his voice cannot reach her. He was determined to wake up as soon as possible. However, in this gloomy world, nothing allowed him to do so, so a few more days passed. His grandmother was still by his side. But she is even sadder than before because the people around her keep telling her refuse it because they don't understand why she doesn't want to do it. She has been taking care of him since he lost his parents, so she will never give up on him, and she still believes he will wake up someday, so she asks Hyun-sung to give him a sign that he is alive at least once. Meanwhile, Hyun-sung is desperately trying to get his body to move, but is unable to do so. Several years have passed since then. He was visited by his younger brother telling him that he could no longer hold on, because those who did this to his brother now set their sights on him. At the same time, their grandmother started working in a restaurant to earn money to pay for his sick leave and ended up injuring herself, so he asks what should he do now because now all he wants is for his brother right now died, because then they would not have suffered so much if he had just done it now. Helpless and weeping, he asks his brother to wake up and just get up the hell, while Hyun-sung has already lost hope of ever getting up or even dying of his own accord, because he couldn't even shed tears, so now he's delirious, thinking that all this was just a dream to him, and if he endures a little more, he is sure that he will wake up from this dream. 3 years later, he was still in a coma, noticing that his younger brother Han-jin had not visited him for a long time. Then he accidentally heard the nurses overjoyed that his grandmother could no longer visit him, because now they can increase TV volume. Hearing that they were flippant about his circumstances, he felt rage boil up in him. Then he remembered the faces of everyone who had hurt him, even those teachers who covered for these bastards. He dreamed that he could somehow miraculously return to that time. He dreamed of destroying each of them to the last. Rage is raging in his head now, and he is thinking about how to deal with the people who turned him into such a person and do it as cruelly as possible. But beating them to the point of death was not enough. Even such a simple act of revenge as this could not satisfy him. From beginning to end, regardless of means and methods, he is going to create a plant that completely uproots them, so that they can never crawl up again and that they will face more pain than he endured. With this, he comes up with a perfect plan that will destroy everything they have, but it's been 10 years since then, but he was still bedridden. There was no one around him, and none of this matters to him anymore, so he begs someone, anyone, to end his life. And so he opened his eye, only to be met by himself. Talking to himself, he somehow felt relieved even before he had time to process what he had said to himself. He noticed that it was already morning and he was in a familiar place. Realizing that he was in his class again, he assumed that it must be another dream about that day, so he pinched his face to check if it was real, but to his surprise, it hurt. Still, a simple pinch on the cheek hasn't convinced him yet, so he picks up a pen and hurts himself. Having done this, he becomes convinced that he has returned to the past, but before he could celebrate his return, his attention was diverted to a bully from their class who was busy hitting on someone just because he was told that to do something himself, which provoked him. Assuming that the other child thinks he was incapable of doing anything on his own. At the same time, Hyun-sung's face was filled with shock as he realized that this situation was the starting point of all his pain, so without hesitation, he stood up from his seat and approached the bully to tell him to stop. Now that the bully's attention has shifted to him, he began to speak rudely and threaten Hyun-sung, but before he could finish his provocations, Hyun-sung excitedly punched the bully in the face, because he returned to those moments that he dreamed of for so long even before it all happened. Now we come to the day when everything in his life changed. He still remembers what happened that day. Park Min-chul listened to classes with half an ear. He was a typical example of a bully who hit on his friends, and besides, he really liked the game called Legend Online. That's when he decided to approach Lee Jong-min, as John was a smart person and Park Min-chul assumed he was good at games. On the same day, Lee Jong-min became Park Min-chul's game shuttle, and it was because of this that Lee Jong-min, who was the top student in his class, began to fall off the list, as well as Park Min-chul's insistent request to invest his personal money in buying game items. Lee Jong-min's stress reached the top of his head, and so he asked Park Min-chul to do it himself. That day, for the first time, he saw the violence committed right in front of his eyes. He didn't want to cause any trouble, but remembered that Lee Jong-min would kindly help him with his studies from time to time, so he just couldn't watch Lee Jong-min being beaten up without the help of some friend. But before he could do anything, one of his group of friends stopped him and advised Hyun-sung not to mess with Park Min-chul. He knew what he was talking about. He said that Park Min-chul was always good at sports and kept up in the boys' hierarchy. Since Park Min-chul's name wasn't all that intimidating to Hyun-sung, he went to deal with him anyway. As the teacher came soon after, the situation was handled rudely. But from that day on, Park Min-chul's gang began to pursue him with all their might. Every day, Park Min-chul's gang dragged him along. In less than a day, he came to his senses, as he was beaten until he turned into a mess. Even after school, there were days when he couldn't sleep because of their bullying, like running errands for games, and there weren't any others. That's how you can describe his situation. It was a living hell. However, his return means that now that he has successfully punched Park Min-chul in the face, things will be different. Everyone was surprised about this, even Park Min-chul. He couldn't believe it, so when he turned to look at him, Hyun-sung grabbed his head to hit him on the table. Now his mouth was filled with blood. His classmates couldn't believe that Hyun-sung has always been such a tough guy. However, he hasn't finished teaching this bitch a lesson yet, so Hyun-sung hits him again, because this is the moment and this situation imprinted in his head when he fell into a coma. Also, Hyun-sung can easily dominate Park Min-chul because he knows that his fighting style is purely based on size. Also, Park Min-chul is not used to that. To be beaten, so that he will definitely faint if he refuses his first attack. That's why Hyun-sung throws the first punch at the moment when Park Min-chul is trying to react after getting punched in the face. Hyun-sung also calculated that he would grab his hair and slam his face right on the table, because he endlessly simulated this whole scenario for the last 10 years, even this next step, kicking him in the face. Throwing him against the wall is not revenge enough for Hyun-sung. Park Min-chul doesn't even know how long he's been waiting for this moment, so Hyun-sung didn't care if he beat him to death or not. If Park Min-chul raises his head, Hyun-sung will kick him in the face. If he blocks the kick with his hands, he will break his arms. However, before Hyun-sung could deal any more damage in his direction, a chair was suddenly thrown which he successfully dodged without any problems, so he turns to whoever did it, only to see a bunch of hooligans ordering him to stand up. He asks them what are they going to do if he doesn't stop. Seeing that he didn't look scared at all, young Miho wondered if Hyun-sung had lost his mind. And since Kang Chang-suk is the strongest of the group, he approached Hyun-sung without hesitation. But before they could start a fight, one of the students informed them that a teacher was approaching them. So they decide to go back to their rooms and finish it later. But before they leave, Kang Chang-suk threatens Hyun-sung, telling him that he will be fucked as soon as he finds him after class. Now that classes had begun, Park Min-chul was thinking over what had happened to him and couldn't believe what had just happened. So he went into a rage and mentally threatened Hyun-sung. At the same time he was thinking about what to do with Hyun-sung. After class is over, the other guys and I are going to gather here as soon as classes are over, so Park Min-chul is more than sure about how to deal with it. He now assumes that the nerd only beat him up because he caught him off guard. He didn't mean to intimidate Hyun-sung at all, even though Hyun-sung was the class president and interfering from time to time. He never crossed the line, so he never had to mess with him. But now that Hyun-sung has crossed the line in first place, he will surely leave him half dead as soon as class is over. Meanwhile, the other bullies are looking at their watches, waiting for class to end, discussing what happened and thinking about why Hyun-sung acted like he had backups. And yet, whatever the reason, Hyun-sung looked down on them in front of everyone. If they left it at that, the other guys would also start treating them lightly, so even if they got the request, they would decide to use this opportunity to stomp on him for sure so that Kim Hyun-sung would never look at them so arrogantly again. Eyes. Shortly after class ends, the teacher leaves, so Park Min-chul hurriedly gets up to deal with Hyun-sung, but to his surprise, Hyun-sung's feet were already flying into his face, knocking him out a second time, and before he could hit the ground. Hyun-sung grabbed his head so that he wouldn't pass out immediately and told him face to face that they should continue where they left off. Hearing this, Min-chul was stunned and wondered why Hyun-sung wanted to fight them. At the same time, the other hooligans got up and went straight to the Hyun-sung's class, but as soon as they arrived at the place, they were shocked to see the people gathered outside. It was only now that young Miho realized what was happening, so they immediately ran to the scene. When they arrived at Hyun-sung's class, they were shocked to see that Min-chul's face was already so badly beaten, but they were even more surprised when Hyun-sung greeted them and waited for them to arrive. They saw that he managed to beat their colleague. Kang Chang-suk pounced on him with his fists, but he didn't even know that Hyun-sung had endlessly replayed this scenario in his head when he was in a comatose state for the past 10 years and had no problem taking care of Park Min-chul. But the biggest problem he faced was this guy Kang Chang-suk. It was easy for him to defeat Park Min-chul, but he couldn't find ways to defeat this guy with the strength he had at the moment. However, the answer to this question is simple. He must do something that he could not even think of before, so he just had to take a piece of metal and stick it in Kang Chang-suk's temple, because honest edges do not matter, and in order to get his revenge. He has no reason or time to be picky, so he takes another attack to get his way, because no matter what kind of training Kang Chang-suk has done, he is sure that even he cannot handle to be hit with an iron. Now that Kang Chang-suk passed out, he threw the trash in their direction, leaving the other bullies in complete shock. But before they had a chance to realize what had happened, Hyun-sung took this as a chance to use all his weight, so if he drops it here he will never be able to react to the next attack, and he is still going to Lee Young-min-ho is more dangerous on him from behind because it is better to finish off that Yantaka once and for all so that he wins the battle in which he is outnumbered. With these words he left that Yantaka bloodied and unconscious on the ground while Hyun-sung didn't even blink once. However, putting in so much effort to cope with these guys, he noticed that his body was not prepared enough to complete his plans. Nevertheless, he could not stop there. Not yet, because we have one more bag of trash left. While Young Min-ho was stunned to even move as he was completely caught off guard by Hyun-sung's strength, because he assumed Hyun-sung was strong enough to be off the target list bully, but now that he saw it with his own eyes, Hyun-sung standing in front of him just looks like a monster in the situation he was in. He knew he couldn't defeat Hyun-sung alone, and since he was now within the reach of Hyun-sung's fist, he could stop the shaking in his hands. So when Hyun-sung tried to hit him, he flinched, but luckily for Young Min-ho, the teacher arrived and was able to stop the fight before his face blushed. Thanks to this outcome, Young Min-ho returned to his former smile as there are 3 students who finished their bloody days. Young Min-ho was sure that Hyun-sung was in trouble in the teacher's office. The teacher scolds Hyun-sung, telling him that there are limits, while planning to avoid his duties as a consultant and put all the blame on Hyun-sung. But before he could finish his threats, Hyun-sung calmly told him that he didn't need to overreact, because it doesn't look like this is the first time he's been bullied at school. Hearing this, the teacher is dumbfounded, so Hyun-sung tells him to do what he can. He can just use this skill of his, close this case so as not to aggravate the situation. Close this case so that he does not get in trouble. The teacher reacts violently to this statement that Hyun-sung has already calculated because, as he expected, this is the reason he died. He died not only because of the harassment. The cowardly adults who were busy keeping their noses down also played a big part in it. He distinctly remembers how Kim Young-chul, the advisor of the first division, lived like a piece of shit who couldn't even be called a human being. So before Kim Young-chul could give him another slap in the face, Hyun-sung advises him to lower his voice, and if he doesn't he won't be able to tell others that he received bribes from his parents, especially from Young Min-ho's parents. Even if that's not the case at all, there are other things he can say, like about having an affair with an English teacher. Now when Hyo sees that his words have finally reached the teacher's mind, he tells him to better stop and calls him a piece of shit. In a past life, Hyun-sung somehow endured bullying, finally came to a decision. He knew it wasn't such a good decision, but he went looking for a teacher thinking he needed adult support. However, the teacher didn't do anything special after believing Park Min-chul's argument and telling him that they were just joking a bit, and since he's rather large, Hyun-sung must have misunderstood that he was bullying him, and that's the reason they ended up tackling it this way, while Hyun-sung was sweating like crazy because he knew what was going to happen next. Coming out of the teacher's office because of what Hyun-sung had just done, they got pissed off just as much like always, and Park Min-chul orders Hyun-sung to follow them. Soon after, the group beats up Hyun-sung while he curses his teacher as he let him down, thinking that the teacher is just ignorant and believed the lies of the bullies. However, when he was being beaten, he saw his teacher, and because the teacher saw the violence with his own eyes, Hyun-sung thinks the teacher would have realized the seriousness of the situation and would definitely help him, but his assumptions turned out to be completely wrong because the teacher only pretended not to understand his situation and turned to the other side. After that, Hyun-sung realized that his teacher was Kim Young-hyul was a coward, and only later did he find out that he was the type who was used to accepting money from his parents. And Jong Min-ho's parents were one of the sources of his income. He didn't have the slightest intention of solving this issue from the very beginning. After that, he tried his best to resolve this issue, even if he had to do it alone, even knowing that he couldn't win it while waving his fist. He tried his best to escape from this hellish reality, and therefore this day turned out to be especially cruel. However, after his retribution, Min-ho's parents have the audacity to complain about what happened to their son, forcing his grandmother to apologize to them. At the same time, Jan Min-ho gladly blames him for what happened, turning the situation completely against him due to the interference of adults. It was an area where he could not do anything without his parents. Even as a member of the school's anti-violence committee, he took punishment alone, and the gang of Park Min-chul lived her school life without any problems since falling into a coma. He only later realized the fact that he cannot take revenge by force alone. Even adult intervention must be completely eliminated in order for him to take revenge in the true sense of the word. We return to the present, and Kim Young-chul's face reflects the shock of what he just said. However, he tried to brush it off, thinking that Dan was bluffing. Unfortunately for him, Hyun-sung was deadly serious when he advised him that from now on when he spoke to him he should think carefully before say a word, and in order to dispel all doubts in Kim Young-chul, Hyun-sung tells him that he knows Kim Young-chul was introduced by Young Min-ho's parent through a university graduate, so he cared about what Min-ho even before he entered this school, and as a reward he received a monthly allowance and also had an affair with an English teacher, a married woman with 3 children, and they often go to the hotel. Seeing the face of Kim Min-ho, Hyun-sung understands that Kim Young-chul finally understands that he's not bluffing, so he asks him if he should say something else, and since Kim Young-chul is surprised by this, he can't answer, so Hyun-sung continues to insult him by scolding him with Yensha for living so dirty to the point that it's not even tip of the iceberg. If all his abuses are exposed, his life as a teacher will be difficult, so he advises him not to even think about calling it nonsense, and if he continues to behave like this, even if he has to drop out of this school, he will still trample on his life as a result. Kim Young-chul will be stunned even if he cannot answer. Hyun-sung knows about all this because by the time he entered the 3rd year, Kim Min-chul's personal files were revealed. His wife came to school, gave him a refreshing slap in the face, and stamped the divorce papers. And later it turned out that Kim Min-chul's family lived relatively well. And there were rumors that everything that could be called property belonged to his wife. So if this is true, he is sure that Kim Young-chul is most afraid of his adventures being made public. Despite all this, he was so sure this blackmail would never work, so after Kim Young-chul fully realized the circumstances he was in, he apologized to Hyun-sung and asked him what to do. So without hesitation, Hyun-sung tells him that if he wants to shut him up, he offers to continue to behave as he lived, but this statement confuses Kim Munchal, so he asks why Hyun-sung explains that in the future he should continue to live like garbage, to remain an idle observer of the affairs of students, to bury them even if he knows that this is wrong, but will only change the topic of conversation from now on. He will do it for him and prevent this incident from blowing up no matter what means or methods he does it, and if he follows his instructions until the day he graduates from school he will never reveal his secrets. Because of this he understands what he has in. He's a coward, though, so he bows his head telling Hyun-sung that he'll try his best. After this cute interaction, Sleep has left the office and now he's walking down the hall thinking about his plans, and this is Kim Young-chul, just the first card he thought of in advance so that he should hurry up to prepare the next card. However, at the moment he needs to do something. Meanwhile, Young Min-ho threw a tantrum in his class thinking that he did not understand that he was just a human being, threatening Han-sang loudly knowing that he was not around, and behaved very tough, and because he knows that Kim Young-chul received money from his parents. Young Min-ho assumes that Kim Young-chul will expel Hyung-seo from school, so he's sure that he won't have to deal with Hyung-seon and he won't have to rack his brains over him anymore, because to be honest with himself he was scared to death. But still, to prevent others from doing the same, he gets naughty and throws a table across the room to threaten everyone, because he considers himself a predator, so he will never let his status fall to the abyss. After all, he's been acting like a tough guy. He sits down still thinking that he is complete, so he tries to convince himself that what happened must be just a coincidence, so if he meets Hyun-sung again he will surely destroy him easily. But before he can fool himself, Hyun-sung opens the door calling him, which shocks Chong Min-ho to no end. At the same time, Hyun-sung tells him that they should finish what they were doing. When Hyun-sung approaches him, Young Min-ho realizes that he screwed up, and soon after that his face comes into contact with Hyun-sung's fist, knocking him completely off his feet. And as soon as he looks at him again, Hyun-sung, he only sees the demon coming towards him. But before he could react, Hyun-sung's feet were already on his face, and before he could faint, Hyun-sung pulled him closer to hit him consecutively, preventing him from saying anything right now, for it was impossible for him to even ask for help, while Hyun-sung was enjoying every moment of it. Now seeing Hyun-sung's reaction, Young Min-ho realized that Hyun-sung was crazy. Young Min-ho got hit on the head a few times hoping someone would save him, so after he's all over the place he was looking for it, he saw Kim Young-chul who was looking at them through the window, so he was convinced that all this would soon be over, but to his surprise Kim Young-chul just pretended that he did not understand anything in the current situation, and then, to aggravate his hopelessness, Hyun-sung advises him not to count on anything for the slightest help, because no one in this school would ever help him. Before it happened 5 minutes ago, Kim Young-koi was trembling desperately in his chair. At the same time he was deep in thought because of what Hyun-seong had just told him, trying to convince himself that this incident is beyond his control. Of course the school wouldn't want the situation to escalate, and yet if he doesn't punish Hyun-sung properly the parents of the victims will make a fuss about it. Young Min-ho's parents in particular will never turn a blind eye to what concerns them son, and since they are wealthy people who own several housing estates and are well-known Daesan figures, they have spared no financial support needed for their school recently thanks to their donations. The renovation of the school was completed because their subjects are specially handled by the principal of the school. Nothing can be done. Their influence must be stronger than anything in the world. The biggest problem is that he was also getting money from them. Once they start making it, even a person like him can't do anything. So when all these problems piled on him, he panicked thinking about how to solve them, so he came up with a solution: problems separating Jen Min-ho from this situation, since Henson has never contacted Jen Min-ho, so if he just convinced his parents they could stay away in this particular case. After all, these brats are just friends of their son. If he finds Hyun-sen and asks him to at least not mess with Chen Min-ho, it won't be the worst situation yet. Kim Yen-chul finally had a solid plan and ran to find Hyun-sung without hesitation, but as soon as he got to their class he realized that it was already too much late, so when Young Min-ho looked at him he just pretended to be ignorant, because he knows that everything will be over for him as soon as his relationship with the English teacher is known. Now in the present, Hyun-sung hasn't finished dealing with Young Min-ho, though he was still furious because he remembered how they looked down on him daily, bullying him during his 3 years of high school. When he first started, it fills him with even more rage, because now he has no choice but to let go of young Min-ho to avoid being killed. He reacted instantly after that. He went to his seat and looked at the state of young Min-ho to understand what an idiot he was. Young Min-ho, and he did all this knowing that if he just didn't mess with Chen Min-ho, the rest of the guys could be covered somehow, but if he was going to choose his opponents for revenge, he wouldn't have punched Park Min-cheol in the face at the moment when he's back. He'd probably rather live a peaceful life, avoiding those bastards. However, after experiencing his hellish life as a vegetative patient, he only dreamed of a cruel place, and this is what it led to. And in this regard, Hyun-sung knows that the hype will soon rise as the headmaster, who said that he will make Bright Avenue High School prestigious. He will try his best to punish him for this incident against dozens of witnesses who have seen him keep it from them. He won't be able to stop it even if he tries, and if he can't handle even a high school with bright prospects in the first place, he won't be able to even dream of getting revenge on which he trying to carry out. So this is just the beginning. Shortly after that, the faculty got together and Hyun-sung sat down at the table opposite to talk about what happened. After that, the principal of the school declared that he would not tolerate this incident. He then asked the teacher if they had seen the faces of the victims. On what did they say, what did they see? So they agreed with each other to punish Sen for this incident. But before the English teacher could continue her speech, Kim Young-chul nudged her with his elbow to make her stop, because he knows they will all be finished if she gets expelled. So to avoid this, Kim Mun-chul approached them and told about it. It is true that Hyun-seung was wrong, but according to his observations, as a well-known teacher of the first section, the cause of the incident was the victims, including Pak Min-case, who heard the governor, Young-chul, did not agree with them, which led the headmaster into confusion. So he asks to clarify what exactly did Kim Young-chul do, and explain to them that there are many students who say that the Park Min-cheol gang bullies students on a regular basis, so he planned to catch them in the act and punish them accordingly. But student Hyun-seung must have been unable to bear it bullying and ended up doing what he did. Then he adds that student Hyun-seung was a victim even before he became a criminal. If they punish Hyun-seung like that, they will do something that a teacher shouldn't do. But even so, the principal tells him that the punishment is unavoidable. Considering principal's reaction leaves Kim Yen-chul with no choice but to respond in kind while they're heating up. Principal does it because he knows well that young Min-ho's parents won't let this matter go unnoticed. So in order to appease their anger, he must fight back against delinquent students. If he wants to make the school brilliant prospects for prestigious educational institutions, he must hold on tight to his connections with the powers that be. So based on this belief, he decides to convene a committee to review the results in a week, and at this meeting they will decide how they will punish Junsun, and he orders the teacher to take care of the matter so that rumors don't spread. And he also states that student Hyun-seung will be suspended pending the meeting of the examination committee. By issuing the appropriate order, he advises Hyun-sung to think about what he did wrong until he appears in school. After that, he has to come to school with his parents in a week, but this outcome only made Hyun-sung even happier as it all went according to his plan. Then he got up and left this place, but before he could return to his class, Kim Young-chul caught up with him and explained to him that he did his best and let's get to know his good sides. However, this gesture of his only made Hyun-sung laugh at him and stop thinking about him even more. But still, Hyun-sung tells Kim Young-chul that he knows what he tried his best, and after that he directly tells him that he knew from the very beginning that Park Min-cheol bullies students. So Hyun-sung looks at him with disdain and advises him to always remember, until he graduates from this school, he should always do everything possible for Hyun-sung, no matter what means or methods it is done. It is the only way to stop him from speaking louder, and of course he is also going to tear the life of an English teacher to pieces if he fails, and still he assures him that he will keep his word about this. Kim Young-chul has no choice but to accept his fate. Hyun-sung Myung continued on his way with gritted teeth, because if it was up to him he would really enjoy destroying him. However, Kim Young-chul is his true target, so he can't immediately discard a useful card just because of his anger. At least he needs it until the foundation is laid. Bright prospects for entering high school in a week. The time will come that he thought and planned for the past decade. Once this time has passed, the headmaster will be surprised by the situation that will unfold completely differently from what he expected. A few moments later, apartment complex that cost only 50 million won. If it weren't for the insurance money they got after his parents died, they would be living here on rent. When he heard that his grandmother had to sell the place for a Medical fee. He thought the world was falling apart for him. Parts he used to think this place was shabby, but now he is just thankful that he has a place to live. Then Hyun-sung enters their house and calls his family to meet them after many long years. However, there is no one there to greet him now. He remembers that his grandmother worked every day at this time, and then he realized that if he wants to help his family, then he does not have time for sentimentality. That he had such an opportunity is already a miracle in itself. So he is going to not only take revenge, but also create good conditions in which his grandma and brother could live comfortably. Before the reconsideration committee meeting, 1 week left, so he knows he only has a few days left to collect his thoughts and also to put his thoughts in order. He opens his notepad to list everything he has planned. Since his plans are clear, he knows he must secure the surrounding area in order to establish a base within 2 years and begin clearing their stronghold. During the second year of training, in order to do this, he needs to fulfill 3 conditions. Firstly, his physical strength. Physical strength is needed in order to destroy those bastards who lead the violence in the school. He must gain enough strength not to fall so easily, although there is another way to train himself, but this guy, if he can just get this guy over to his side, it will give him a huge advantage in combat. The next condition is also pretty similar, which he will have to face from now on, has to do with extensive association. So if he has to deal with everything, he is also, there must be a group of people who share his goal, and that's the whole problem right now. He's just a freshman. Even if he has a perfect plan, he will never be able to take revenge on his own, while he knows that he must arrange the pieces on the game board he created and collect the people he needs. And last but not least, the problem that he can solve only because he knows the future. He must have such experience that will allow him to reduce all problems to nothing so that he can properly implement his plans in any case for solving the upcoming problem before the committee on to review. The paramount condition is to have work experience. Later in the police station, the gray-haired man arranges the price. Because of the situation in which he found himself, using his status, he threatens them, and just in case they do not know him, he introduced himself loudly, and the officer knows very well that he is Go Chon-beom, is the eldest son of a construction company and a quality design figure who can ruin their lives if they do something wrong. But right now, even he has to act caution as the company is in the midst of a transition to a new faith. As such, they have no choice but to follow due process, and it's a better course of action than to be molested by the other side for letting it go. While Gochin-beom is worried about what happened, and he's been here at the police station ever since he started something with he had a fight and he had no choice but to reciprocate. It is not his fault that these were so weak that they had to be taken to the emergency room, but he knows that if something goes wrong, he is sure that those who oppose him will benefit from it, and at the same time he knows that this time he really screwed up. He takes this matter seriously because recently his father made an official statement about the beginning of the war for the throne legacy between him and his brother, who will determine who will receive his position. Him who barely graduated from high school, and his brother who graduated from a prestigious foreign university 3 years ago. His brother even married the daughter of a representative of a prestigious family. So right now his brother is in a much stronger position, and if this case is made public, you will really fall off the cliff. Then the officer tried to calm him down by explaining that it would not be easy for them to let such a thing go by itself, and Gochin-beom was furious when he heard this and tried to explain his point of view. However, the police officer still did not believe him. At the crime scene, there was not even a CCTV camera, and since there was no evidence, they had nothing to disprove the victim's testimony. All he had to do was turn away and curse the air sports competition, and when he turned to look away, he noticed the presence of a child. Now he was wondering why there was a child in this place, but to his surprise, this child stated that he came here to testify what he claims. A few moments later, the police officer sweated like a madman looking at the tape that Hyun-sung gave fists, and no matter how they look at it, they were the ones who tried to start a fight with Mr. Gonchandium, who was just passing by. Hyun-sung explained to them that he accidentally witnessed this and noticed that there were no security cameras around, and since the testimony of the minor was not enough, he requested a video of the black box of a nearby car. Then Hyun-sung claims that this gentleman tried his best to get out of this situation, but these people were persistent, and that's why he had no choice but to fight back if there was something wrong with what he did. So the fact that he was so strong that he knocked out these people with one hit, it was clearly self-defense. Hit by Hyun-sung. Go away. Canbium backed up his statement with a smile on his face, because his father believes that people should only be hit when they deserve it. As long as he has witness evidence, he has no reason to get into trouble only because of this case. So in connection with this, the police officer said that the matter was settled, and after the wrongdoers were helped, he would call him back. Then he tries to save his ass by telling the Go-Chambia that they were sorry for the inconvenience they caused him and they should have listened to him and carefully study this issue. In addition, they could not show impartiality after they saw the blood of the victim, but all this nonsense did not work on him. Tell the police officer that this is his problem so that he would definitely remember this face of his and tell him that he had a bright future ahead and just looking forward to this moment. After all, Ula and Hyun-sung are now outside the police station. Then he tells Hyun-sung that if it wasn't for him he would really get hurt, so he Go-Chambia is not the type to forget a favor and gives him money for what he did, which Hyun-sung happily agrees to, while Go-Chambia is amazed by this, because usually kids his age are reluctant to take such a huge amount of money. But not only did he look for security cameras, he even found black box footage. However, his thoughts are interrupted by Hyun-sung asking him if he thinks it was all just a coincidence. This question confuses him, so he asks for clarification, on which Hyun-sung gets straight to the point and tells him that he knows who he is and under what circumstances he was inside. With all this, he was ready to knock Hyun-sung to the ground. But before that, he asks who he is, to which Hyun-sung answers him that he is evidence that it was not just a coincidence. He was sure of his information because Go-Chambia was a famous person in their area, and thanks to this he remembered what is happening right now in the Menjing construction company and in his family, about how they lived until now and how it all ended. He asks him to thank him for an hour and can promise that it will be worth his time and his future. By changing the scenery, they are now in the Hyun-sung cafe. Showed him the original copy of the black box so that he can go to the Chambium, as he was able to prove that it was self-defense using only the later half of the video. He showed me to them the first half of the video. The first part he is currently watching is what happened to the year. It is clear evidence that it was not a coincidence. 30 minutes before the incident, 3 men gathered in front of a convenience store. At first glance, they can appear to be customers just using convenience store services, but even though 30 minutes had already passed, they didn't move an inch and remained in place as if they were waiting for someone. As soon as he arrived at the scene and not brazenly started a fight with him as if asking to be hit, they tilted their faces forward and let out a few curses. Go-Chambia tried to keep his composure, but in the end he punched the first person. In fairness, it is worth saying that the Go-Chambia must be, and himself suspected something about it. The recent series of events is happening as if someone intended to do it as soon as the succession race began. Since then, only bad things have happened to him. The same bad things happened to him. The same bad things happened to him. Despite all this, Hyun-sung asks him what if all this was planned by Go-Chambia in order to undermine his authority. Whether it was by accident or intentionally, the seriousness of the problem is strong. Differs. To be honest with himself, he had his suspicions, but didn't want to know that his younger brother, who grew up well, did such a vile act. After these revelations, he asks Hyun-sung what his motives were. While Hyun-sung takes a sip of tea, he remembers all he knows. Menjing Construction is a construction company. At the moment it's only recognized in the countryside, but based on their hefty capital and technology, they could succeed in apartment branding thanks to the philosophy of Homeojin's chairman of the board that you should never play with houses that people live in. Only reduced margins and increased speed of completion of construction, and later the name of the company Menjing Construction became one of the large conglomerates. But in the course of this process, both sons disappeared. The crisis was supposed to start with Gonchang. From that moment, shortly after that, an incident occurred that shook the territory of the Desan to such an extent that even he, who suffered from school violence, knew about this. Go-Jang-suk aspired to be the successor, did all sorts of things, and ended up becoming him. Discovered Go-Chambia, his older brother. Enraged, Gonchang-byam also hit his younger brother with his fist, and as a result of this blow, Gokun-suk became permanently disabled. Coming enraged about this, Gyum-jin announced that both of his sons were incompetent, so he would not hand over the management of the construction of the Menjing company to them, and this caused an uproar. So at some point, the excavation of the activities of the two sons became popular enough to be posted as memes on the internet. Because of this, he was able to trace his memory and find this place anyway. It was because of this that the chairman of the board, Gu Menjin, hired a professional manager who helped the Menjing construction company rise to the ranks of the conglomerates. Honestly, for the sake of the Manjin Construction Company, it would be better if nothing changes in the future. Though the eldest son of Guksindium did not tell enough to deal with his competitor, but he is an incompetent person with a typical nasty temperament. The second son of Go Young-suk, a vicious person who does everything regardless of morality to achieve his own goal for the Yongjin Construction Company. It would be the only right thing to get rid of both sons. It's for their own good, but it's not really that important to him. For Hyun-sung, it's more important their usefulness in his business. What is good or bad, what kind of butterfly effect will happen. When the future changes things like that, it's not his business. It doesn't matter values, even if the future changes for the worse by his choice in this life. Revenge is in the first place, and he is going to take care of his family, so plucking up his determination, Henson tells Gutchin Biome that he will help him get revenge on Gotcha Hebich, and so that he, the eldest son, could become the best chairman of the board construction company Menjin Construction. Upon hearing his bold statements, Gongchang laughed at how ridiculous it was, but before he could undermine the validity of the words, Hyun-sung told him that he knew about the existence of people who helped him in this race for the throne of the legacy, but what seemed so strange to him, it's that the people who help him just fill his ears with sweet things, while a simple high schooler like him can figure out Gongchon-sok's plan. So it's quite obvious these people must be Gongchon-sok's informants. Hyun-sung adds that he won't ask him to believe in it. All he wants is to give him a chance. They have a chance to build their relationship on trust. Now he is under a lot of stress. He went outside and decided to smoke a little, thinking about what to do, but before he could do that, he was disturbed by one of cafe staff. So with bloodshot eyes he told him to fuck off, otherwise he would just destroy this cafe, while Hyun-sung just looks at him from the window in deep thought, as he is with a hound man who has lived carelessly ever since he was born. The eldest son of the company Manjin Construction, he became famous for being known as a ticking time bomb that cannot be touched on Sandland, but he did not approach him because he was a righteous man in the first place. It is because he is a moderately corrupted man who is ready to destroy his brother for the sake of power. In fact, that's why he decided that he was the right person to carry out his plan. Meanwhile, the Gokandium understands that what this brat said was nothing wrong compared to his brother. He has nothing at all, and in this situation, it is quite obvious that the position the successor will be powerless, taken away from him. However, is it right in this situation to believe the words of a 17-year-old teenager whom he met only for the first time in his life? But then he remembers what his father told him, saying that if he does not have the skills, then leave those who have skills around him. Don't worry about their age or position. If he keeps those around him who have the skills he needs, you can leave the Menjin Construction Company. Finally remembering those words, he followed his courage and went to Yunsun and ordered him to tell him about his plans on the first of the day. He will listen to all this and make a decision. Meanwhile, Gokun-suk is informed about what happened, so he becomes furious and throws his phone on the ground, cursing while doing it, because the old-fashioned way of thinking of this geyser is to blame. When he asks why, he still believes that the eldest son comes into the succession before they did at that time. Then he tries to calm himself, because here he still has an advantage in this case. If nothing special happens, the position of successor will naturally fall to him. But before he has time to think clearly, is heard another call, so he picks up the phone only to be shocked by the news that Hanson's wife broke into Hanson's office. At the same time, Hyun-sung tells the Gojin Biome that he needs to be aware of reality in order to win this legacy race, so he asks him who is he thinks he's a good fit for the chairmanship of a Menjin Construction Company. Of course, it's Gachon-suk. Unlike him, who barely graduated from high school, Go Young-suk studied business administration at a prestigious university overseas, and he married a representative of a prestigious family as soon as he returned to Korea. After that, he insisted that those whom he recruited fairly decide on the choice of a successor. In this way, an official succession structure was formed from the very beginning. Nothing was a coincidence. Gonchan-suk prepared a lot to take his brother's place, and as a result he created a very profitable one for him position, except for the fact that he beats his older brother. There is no detail in which he surpasses him. More on top of that, he had many similar cases and accidents like this, so also in this world would support him. After hearing all these facts stated to him, I was furious. However, he couldn't deny any of this, so he just shut up furiously. While Hyun-sung continues, stating that even after taking into account such differences, he really believes that he has enough opportunity to win. After hearing this statement, Go Chang by Mastil and was intrigued, so he asked to contribute clarity, to which Hyun-sung explained that even when Hyun-suk clearly wins this race for succession, there is only one reason why Chairman Jin would make him fight for it, and that it all comes from the naive thought that the eldest son would still want to become the heir of the throne. That is why he can compete, even though the difference has grown to such an extent that the competition itself is necessary. In every way sinks to the very bottom, where he is now. With just this statement, Go Chanbyeom realizes what he was talking about. Finally being on the same page, Hyun-sung asks Gu Chanbi what he thinks will happen next. If he had the same skills, of whom would Chairman Jin choose from the two of you? That's when the competition begins. It's when he stands on the same level as a rival. At that time, the only strong point of being the eldest son will be the class that he can never turn upside down. So, if he wants to win the war for the throne legacy, he needs three things. First, its backstory, and in that aspect he already lost when Hyun-suk was busy making alliances with prestigious daesang families through marriage. He was busy making connections with useless people in the red area. More, the second issue is reputation, and he doesn't need to explain Chinbam's reputation as Daesan's asshole. So they are left with only the third ability issue. While Go Changbum hung out with women and enjoyed alcohol, Hyun-suk was proving his worth by making progress in his business. Gochi he bitch not necessarily be special, because not doing that would be better than what Chanbyeom does. Go Chanbyeom was pissed off to hear about it, but since it was all about facts, all he had to do was look away. Then Hyun-sung states that from now on they are going to cancel those three things, so they go back to the first backstory question, and now Hyun-sung asks what they should do to undo all of this, because it doesn't look like he could marry such a prestigious family as Gon Chang-suk right away, and besides, he can't gain that kind of authority or become a cloud for no reason, none of that, so they'll have to think about it from the opposite perspective. In order to do this, they have to separate the Gonchang from his, because as soon as his wife's support as the main figure in the background disappears, the Gutchin bitch will return to the same starting line as they. With the help of this plan, they are all ready to complete the task. So only a few moments have passed. The brothers are now inside the building with their father, and a year young Suk apologizes for what happened, in relation to which their father Jin cannot accept his apology, calling him pathetic bastard, and since Kop Jin looks at him with contempt, he tells Chang bitch that he contacted his father-in-law, and this old father of his told him that he will teach him a lesson so that the situation does not come to a divorce. And Chang Suk's wife asked him to tell young Suk that she had been for some time will stay away, because she is going to watch him make amends to her after hearing about how his father humiliated his pride in him. Chang Suk was about to apologize again, but Jin's change was enough, because he had already reminded them several times that if a man will play his mother differently, the family will break up. So, if he was going to play with a bitch like this, he should have done it alone, just like that Chanbyeom. So it looks like he screwed up in raising his kids. After that, he ran into Chanbyeom again, asking him why he was going in and out of the police station. Nam Jin was sure that Chanbyeom would continue to claim that he was not guilty like before. However, he didn't expect that from himself. Chanbyeom was already planning on not subverting his expectations, because before all this happened in the cafe where he was still eaten by his son, Chanbyeom excitedly suggests that he should look for Chung Suk's flaws and point them out to his father, to which Hyun-sung tells him that it won't work. I am quite sure of this, because when he was in a comatose state he heard a documentary from the Mangini, and this chairman of the board, Jin, knew everything about what his two sons were doing, and of course he also knew that Gokun-suk was making evil plans to overthrow his 100th brother. However, Chairman Jin said that it was also a way to succeed, and so he didn't stop young, while Hyun-sung knows that Jin didn't prioritize cleanliness as a criteria for choosing a successor, even if his successor's personal life and behavior was a bit messy. He wanted it to be someone who could contribute to the development of the company, so he's sure Gomet Jin's heart isn't Gongchang Mayam, just because he'll start pointing out Gongchang Suk did the wrong thing, and he'd rather put a professional in charge manager, and if Gongchang Suk's disappointing appearance remains the same, then reducing his enemy to his level will not give him a chance to become a successor. So Gong Chanbi needs to show an attitude befitting the position of chairman of the board. He must prove that he has changed. Hyun-sung says what to do, while Jang Byron apologizes to his father and also promises him that he will be discovered and will not let something like this happen again. And since he knows that this is not enough to touch his heart, he doubled over with his head bowed and stating whatever the reason was, It was wrong that the eldest son of the Menjing construction company caused such a problem, and from now on he will remember his position and think before doing anything, and therefore he asks his father to allow him to continue to scold Chan for what his brother did. It was thanks to this action that the bones were thrown. Therefore, surprisingly, Chan's father tells him that he heard that they were the ones who started a fight with him, but he did everything possible to avoid a fight, so Kop Jin tells him something he never told his sons, before saying that he did a good job taking care of this problem. He is proud of himself after that. The brothers are already standing in front of his father's office, and Chang-suk can't help cursing loudly that he doesn't know who will tell his wife the location of the hotel. But if he catches this bastard, he will tear him to pieces while looking at the Chinji in his side. However, his threats were not heard by him, since the Chinbibe was simply too stunned by the fact that he had just heard from his father, that same father who had always been strict before. I recognized him. He also patted him on the shoulder and praised him for doing a good job now that he experienced it firsthand. He was determined to continue like this, and from now on, after a while, Canbium was already sitting in his car with Hyun-sung. Then he thanked him for the advice and for that his father complimented him. Now when he counts Hyung's words all on the truth, he asks to tell him what he has to do to become the chairman of the board, because he will listen to everything he says. Henson answers, I advise him not to worry too much, because the only thing they did was to return Chan to the original background line, and in order to become as the chairman of the board he needs to win the remaining rounds. He has some plans, but right now they are difficult to implement, so for now he advises Chinbium to join the company as a junior employee and find out how it works. Then he will tell him about his plan when the right time comes. And Chinbium will immediately ask him this question, but since he witnessed how Hyun-sung's advice worked flawlessly, he willingly agrees. He even declares that he will do whatever he orders him. Now that Hyun-sung willingly cooperates with him without further questions, he tells him that there is one more thing he wants him to do and immediately asks what it is. So Henson tells him if he remembers their conversation in a cafe and that they work together because they both have what they want from each other. For that you helped him. Chang Diam promised to fulfill his desire. Chang Diam tells him to just spell it out, because there is nothing like that what he wouldn't do for him. After hearing these words from him, Henson came to rapture and he told him what he wants. The next match committee is up and running. A Sean Mainho named Kim Sung-ja slaps an Inshu, calling him a fucking bastard, and because he just let someone beat her son, she is more than willing to humiliate him, and if he doesn't kick the bastard out who she did so, she assures him that she will get him fired, to which he replies that she understands everything. With these words, she leaves him. While young Chell is going through an existential crisis right now and is thinking about what to do, then he approaches and convinces Hyun-sung to apologize for him to avoid expulsion, and this is the only way to minimize his punishment, to which Henson bluntly tells him that he does not want this, and he adds that he understands that Jong Menghu's mother is putting pressure on him. However, he asks him if he would prefer that he reveal his secret money or cheated on his wife. By saying this, he realized that if Hyun-sung fell, he would fall with him soon. After that, Young-hyul entered before the review committee while the director was already talking to Young Min-ho's mother, telling her not to worry as he took this situation under control. His self-control. Then Yunchul sits on the chair allotted to him and thinks that he is doomed, because no matter if he becomes a cheating husband or a corrupt teacher in Daisen, he will have nowhere to stay. So now he just had to ask himself what he can do with all the money saved. However, all his thoughts vanished when he saw the man who was with Hyun-sung. After that, the committee meeting begins, and in order to inform everyone about what exactly happened, the advisor of the criminal Kim Young-chul had to explain what happened. Therefore, not even a minute had passed since he stood up exclaiming that the reason for his case is too clear, and that the bullies of this school children, including Young Min-ho on the first day, began to molest their classmates. So he states that it is an absurd case when the attacker is treated like a victim. He was confident in his decision because before all this happened, he recognized the man who was with Hyun-sung, and he was sure that this was the man whom he saw at the red light of the district. Which means that Kim Hyun-sung's legal guardian is the eldest son of the company Menjing Construction. When he saw the list of attendants, he thought it was another person with the same name. Go Cambium is a real tycoon, while Young Min-ho's parents can't even compare to him. Now his mind was filled with questions. He wondered how such a person could become a guardian Kim Hyun-sung, but since he is a goal-oriented and greedy person, he knows that he doesn't have enough time to think about it because right now the most important thing is to find a way to survive. He is here the only one who knows that he is real Guccium, so this is his only chance to change lane right now. The headmaster can't believe what he said to them, so he asks him to clarify, and for sure today we'll talk about what happened to avoid misunderstandings. He has to do it, so he told them that for a long time he received many messages about Park Min-cheol's group bullying their fellow students in first grade. He adequately scolded them for not doing it anymore, but as time went on, their harassment became more and more violent. A few days ago, Park Min-cheol bullied students Lee Jong-min and Kim Hyun-sung, who were watching how it happened, and when he looked at Hyun-sung he knew he had to tell his story as fully as possible, so he told them from the bottom of his heart that Hyun-sung asked them to stop. After all, they were classmates, and he tried to stop them with clean no. Park Min-cheol called his friends and started threatening Hyun-sung. He then addresses everyone present, trying to convince them to think about it while asking if they can stand still when someone tries to harm them, because student Kim Hyun-sung was just defending himself by the incident. Student John Min-ho follows the same logic after he came to the aid of Min-cheol group leader Park Min-cheol. Student John Mi-ho attacked student Hyun-sung when he tried to defend himself against being beaten up again. Student Kim Hyun-sung had no choice but to have to take action. He knows that his path has gone a little far, but even after he found out exactly what happened, if they only punish Kim Hyun-sung's students, they will become adult scumbags who ignore the fundamental problem of bullying at school. With this his speech ends, shocking everyone who heard him. Even the principal of the school couldn't believe it, so in order to invalidate Yen Kyeol's statement he tells him not to get away from the point, because they were just talking about this heinous incident, as a result of which 4 students were sent to the hospital for the first time in the history of this school, and the information that the victims started bullying is not confirmed, and besides it has nothing to do with the current topic, as there was no reason why the perpetrator committed the crime. Violence cannot be accepted. On top of that, he has never heard about a student doing something so cruel. With just those few words, the situation has changed for the better, and now young Min-ho and his mother are smirking like they already have a child. Then the school principal continues his speech, saying that they are all high school graduates, brilliant prospects, and his heart hurts terribly when choosing who did it wrong, but punishment is necessary so that such an incident does not happen again. They must find out exactly what happened and properly punish the culprit. They must do this in order to help their parents, students who entrusted them with this case. High schoolers with bright prospects can return home with peace of mind, so on the first of the day he tells them to listen to student John Min-ho about what happened, since the testimony of the victim should be more accurate. So without hesitation, as if he was born for this particular situation, he started to tell them. The grass trembles, telling them what happened. He felt something perfect from what that teacher had just said, because when he passed by all he saw was Kim Hyun-sung beating Min-choi, who was already lying on the ground. He asked about it other students, and they told him that Kim Hyun-sung just started waving his fists for no reason. They can find another witness to back up his words. While Hyun-sung couldn't believe this bitch's impudence, then young Min-ho continued by saying that the whole point is that it was Kim Hyun-sung who started the fight. He just tells them the truth. When he saw that his friend was being beaten, all he did was run towards them, but Hyun-sung does not hesitate for a second, raises his weapon. Of course he is sure that Kim Hyun-sung was threatened, as many people rushed to meet him, but Min-choi was in such a bad state that they didn't have time to think about how Kim Hyun-sung would feel. Honestly, he doesn't understand why the teacher should blame everything on them, and this is only part of what the Shonson did, because after the teacher scolded Kim Hyun-sung he didn't know if it was because it upset him, but he came looking for him again and beat him again. He didn't do anything, but he also beat him in front of the others. After all that, he asks them, is it really his fault, covering a smirk with her hands, and to further convince everyone in this match, Min-ho took a step forward to the maximum use of her acting skills. She asked them how this could happen at school. There was violence, so how could she understand this? At the moment it only happened to her son, but they don't know when it can happen to other kids. They parents shouldn't just ignore it, they should punish the bully. They agree, and other parents think there's no excuse to hit someone like that, so now everyone is speaking out in favor of young Min-ho. Meanwhile, in the hospital, 3 thugs are wasting their time, although they believe that Kim Hyun-sung was staying right now because of the temper of Min-ho's mother, a football mom who turns the whole school upside down for Min-ho. They are sure that she would have let it go so easily after seeing that look on her son's face, and then Mingchul had a brilliant idea, like he just hadn't been beaten from his whole life. Now he has the audacity to think that if Hyun-sung isn't expelled he will persecute him until he starts crying and begging, and if Hyun-sung is expelled he will continue to harass him to demand redress while they think of a future in which it will be easy for them not to understand what lies ahead for them. Back at the review committee meeting, Gachin Byam expresses his disdain now. When he is pissed off he curses them without hesitation and asks them to tell them what really happened while calling them bitches. He then asks if they are going to ignore it all, or do they really know nothing? Do they think the human face demon planned all this so that all this happened? To which the school principal was provoked precisely by this, by ordering him not to call their student a demon, but Gotcha Ambia does not care about this, so he asks the school principal what he should call the demon if not a demon, because he personally got acquainted with the Pak Mincheol group and they molested other students, robbed them and stole from them. They are quite famous. He is so famous that there is not a single person here who does not know him. So he asks the headmaster, why is he trying to hide his mess? Could he be so stupid, or is he really took a bribe from these bastards? And he knows that several ambulances drove up to the school because the guys from Park Min-choi's group fell, but it all happened because Hyun-seong was trying to defend himself. His advisor also mentioned that they need to deal with the fundamental problem of this case, and let's be honest here, when they were little did they just stand still while they were beaten up by such thugs? After hearing all this match, Hee Min-ho couldn't ignore it, so she called him a bastard and asked who the hell he was, because she heard that Kim Hyung-sung even no parents. So too he's such a goddamn type to talk like that. Gachin Byam could only smirk, because he knows that in just a few sentences he'll ruin this bitch's entire career before all this happens. Hyun-sung asks him to be his guardian in the car, and that's because in order to defeat the enemy with a lot of things, he also needs to have a lot of things. Among all that he needs, there is one thing that can only be obtained from the Gutching Byam. This is the power of Hyun-sung decides to be with him, being honest, so he tells him that he plans to cause a lot of problems at their school. It's not just some small skirmishes that are common at school, but accidents serious enough to cause problems with the law, and every time it happens he hopes that he will support him and help solve this problem. When he lies on his back, Henson is sure that at least in the Dessen no one can lay a finger on him, and if he can do it right for him and show something that can satisfy him, he will promise that regardless from what he has to do this, he will make him the chairman of the board of the Menjing Construction Company, or maybe something even higher than that, to which he replies saying Hyun-sung that he does not need to worry about this as he is well versed in such things, and whatever he does hit someone or do something else it won't even be a problem, saying that he proudly introduced himself to everyone who is the guardian of the Henson and the eldest son of the Menjing Construction Company.